Well, hello to all you liberated and small d Democrats. As Oedipus says in Oedipus at Colonus, and I quote, I am blind and old, Antigone, my child. What country have we come to? And whose is this city? My sufferings have taught me to endure, and how long these sufferings have lasted. His daughter, Antigone, eventually responds, quote, Father, we must do as other citizens here, yielding in what is dutiful, hearing with obedience. And then she adds, You are a stranger in a strange land, poor man. Make your mind up to reject what this city dislikes and reverence what she loves. And this about sums up how I'm feeling at the moment, because I'm not going to speak on breaking news, but rather on the general state of our once upon a time democratic republic. That's right, it's now past tense. I'm not for once going to speak on this breaking news, but rather Tom Hartman's recent podcast titled Early Onset Dictatorship, because at least there's one clear voice out there expressing the threat and the factual, actual reality. There are others, those in the media, print press, social media, including law professors, constitutional scholars, political analysts, and the like, who have all twisted themselves into intellectual knots to deny or doubt the fact that a coup has taken place. We are directly enmeshed in a constitutional crisis and living under a presidential dictatorship and a vitriolic, mean-spirited, oligarchical rule inspired by the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, extremist ideologues, corporations, ultra-conservative, Christian nationalist, religious bigots, and the extremely wealthy who stand back in the shadows but are directing events and the presidency. The evidence is overwhelming, and so is the denial. People, all 77 million of them, who embrace this madness are fools, and the educated and the well-informed elites, peddling optimistic outcomes, are even more foolish, if that is even possible. Trump, after all, is now fully ensconced in power and is actively following the Hitlerian Nazi plan straight out of Mein Kampf to establish a full-blown dictatorship, step by step, inch by inch, executive order by unconstitutional executive order, bypassing the Article 1 Congress, which he no longer requires, even though he owns them, destroying the rule of law and a one-time democratic republic, establishing, in fact, a Fourth Reich in America. There are others, those in the media, print press, social media, including law professors, constitutional scholars, political analysts, and the like, who have all twisted themselves into intellectual knots to deny or doubt the fact that a coup has taken place. We are directly enmeshed in a constitutional crisis and living under a presidential dictatorship and a vitriolic, mean-spirited oligarchical rule inspired by the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, extremist ideologues, corporations, ultra-conservative Christian nationalist religious bigots, and the extremely wealthy who stand back in the shadows but are directing events and the presidency. The evidence is overwhelming, and so is the denial. People, all 77 million of them, who embrace this madness are fools, and the educated and the well-informed elites, peddling optimistic outcomes, are even more foolish, if that is even possible. Yes, this is ruled by executive fiat, and that is defined as by a person, in this case Trump, in authority, giving sanction or authorization to, and as meant by an arbitrary decree or pronouncement, especially by a group of persons having absolute authority to enforce it. The king rules by fiat. So it's not just that we're in a dictatorship, it's also an oligarchy. It's a monarchy. It's a totalitarian government. It's a dictatorship. After all, Trump and his Nazi sycophants are legislating taxes by presidential fiat in the form of tariffs, where only Congress has that right and constitutional responsibility. As I've said before, Gestapo men in masks are arresting people on the streets, often without any warrants. Unlawful detentions without due process are taking place, and removals to a foreign country prison where they might remain forever is happening in front of our very eyes, while these people have never been convicted of a crime other than seeking asylum in the United States. Trump is ignoring court orders and judicial process with ruthless, unseemly, and public ridicule of both the judges and the judicial system. There is zero disguise here. The Boasberg and Zenas cases being prime examples of such defiance, even where the Supreme Court has given a direction to allow the federal district courts to facilitate the return of these unfortunates. By fiat, he has managed to target and extort leading law firms into doing his bidding, paying millions in Trump's demand to have them offer pro bono work on cases of his choice, otherwise losing their licenses and security clearances if they fail to adhere to his demands. By fiat, he has used economic threats and frozen funding to frighten universities into submission, dictating anti-free speech policies to them in which they must comply in order to receive federal funds. He owns the FBI, the DOJ, Homeland Security, who are and will do his bidding at any cost, creating both the Ministry of Justice, the DOJ, and an SS or Gestapo entity at the FBI and Homeland Security. It presides over an apparatus that is state and federal, intent on meaningful voter suppression and racial gerrymandering to ensure his continuation in power. And who would deny that if push comes to shove, he will either ignore an election loss or declare a national emergency, effectuate the Insurrection Act, and call out the troops in a demand for martial law. And we only have Mark Elias and his law group fighting this tooth and nail in the courts. There may be others, but Mark is fantastic. And he now floats or announces, as of the other day, an intention or the idea of suspending our great writ, our writ of habeas corpus, written into our Constitution from the first Judiciary Act of 1789. And who can stop him? Surely not the Supreme Court, who helped to create this psychotic monster, giving him the license he now has by issuing a series of enabling decisions directed by Chief Justice Fascist John Roberts with complaisance from Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, Alito, and Thomas. Now a rogue and corrupt right-wing Supreme Court. And even if they should turn on him out of their own self-interest, it will be too late. And lacking the power of the purse or the sword, they have no means to enforce their decisions. And I've discussed this in other podcasts. Just the circumstance of Andrew Jackson in 1832 purportedly telling Chief Justice Marshall in the Indian removal case, "You made your decision, now go and enforce it."